Okay, so good afternoon. This is Dr. Michael Houf, and this is the inaugural episode of Buckle Up. So what we're going to do today is talk about tips and tricks of a successful college career, especially for you incoming freshmen. And as guests today, I do have our Dean of Students, Kirsten Compary, the future Dr. Compary, and the Associate Vice President for Student Success, Dr. Shannon Baker. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Doing all right, thanks.
Okie doke. So why don't we have you introduce yourselves, what you're in charge of, what you do, and then we will start relating this to the freshman experience in particular and the college experience overall. And I guess we'll start with Dr. Baker, our Associate Vice President of Student Success. So what does a Vice President of Student Success do?
Well, today actually is my 4th anniversary working in Student Success as the Associate Vice President. And during that time, I've learned a lot about the different roles that Student Success plays. But basically, as the person overseeing the unit, I try to make sure that things go smoothly in seeing 2 things, such as the first year experience for our freshmen, which also includes our Intro to College class. And we also house our advising. So when you go to see your academic advisor, chances are that advisor works for the Center for Student Success. We also house our tutoring center and our writing center. And the tutoring and writing center offer help in a wide variety of classes to students of all classifications to help them do well in class. You cannot come to the tutoring center and just say, I'm not good at math. However, we do ask that we have you do some preparatory work before your tutoring session and come in with some focused questions so that the tutors can help you learn how to learn instead of just providing you with the answers. You'll see that you have a similar approach to in the writing center. They're going to help talk you through the writing process. They're not going to write the paper for you. So those are our main components of student success. We are also excited to introduce the HEART project this year, which is a Title III HSI STEM and Articulation grant, which will be providing additional tutoring services to students in targeted classes, as well as additional success coaching and peer mentoring opportunities for students in some specified majors such as biology, chemistry, and math, for example.
Okay. You mentioned you're in charge of overall the first year experience, including what would be for in the College of Engineering 1201 or UNIV 1201 across the campus. Can you describe that a little bit more for our incoming students especially?
Sure. So the students that are in General Engineering 1201, that is overseen by the College of Engineering. So you will have an engineering professor teaching that class, and that class is geared towards students who place directly into an engineering major, and it's designed to build rapport among those majors. For the other students in UNIV 1201, we do place you in meta-major groupings, which is a fancy way of saying majors that are similar to yours. So we might have history and political science together. We group the business majors all together into a couple of different sections. And in that way, you're meeting majors and other students who have similar academic interests as you do. And you're also meeting some key people from those programs throughout the semester as we share 3 to 4 weeks with the colleges to give a chance for student organizations and faculty from those programs to come in and meet you. Also in the UNIV sections, freshmen this year will be reading the novel American Panda, and so they will be having a shared experience through reading that novel and then learning study skills, time management skills, how to go talk to a professor through the way that we work through that novel And ultimately, the students will be completing a poster presentation project in a group through UNIV, and then the top poster for each section will compete in a UNIV freshman-wide class poster symposium, which the students really enjoy every fall. So by the time you've finished your first semester of college, you've already engaged in a small research project, you've presented to your fellow students, and in some cases, you've already competed in a poster symposium competition.
Okay. Ms. Compary, so as Dean of Students, and aren't you also, I think I forgot part of your title, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs? So could you describe what you do and how it relates more to students and how you're a resource?
Students are everything that I do. We are designated in student affairs as a lot of the outside of the classroom experiences, outside of what Dr. Baker described that student success does. A lot of the other outside of the classroom experiences are in student affairs. So our student health and wellness department, where we have our healthcare, our disability resource center, our counseling center, our wellness programming, as well as student engagement and campus life. Student activities, student organizations, fraternity and sorority life, leadership programs, all of those kinds of things from those areas. Also overseeing our university housing and residence life, so those students who are living on campus. I also oversee our care closet here on campus, which is our food and hygiene pantry, as well as partnering with our career services office to provide a professional clothing closet available for students. I also then am just really a resource for when students don't know where else to go. If they have questions, they can certainly come to my office, call me, email me, and I'll point them in the right direction. Advisors do a lot of that with students as well through Dr. Baker's area. But really what we want students to do is just know that if they have a struggle, if they have an issue, if they have a question, to reach out so that we can help point them in the right direction. There's lots of help that's available. My office also oversees student parking appeals, so students who get a parking ticket and they feel that was given unfairly. I work through those. We work through notices of absences and all of our COVID protocols through my office as well. So if a student needs to be gone because of a family emergency or needs to be out because of exposure to or diagnosis of COVID, we want them to reach out so that we can provide them with those resources and those protocols and the notices of absences that they can provide to faculty members. So we work through all of those issues as well. Student complaints, all sorts of different things that that students need outside of the classroom and for support. If I'm not directly involved in them, I can certainly point students in the right direction for all of that.
You just hired a new position in your office as well, and
Yes.
Could you describe that position and his role?
Absolutely. His name is Kerry Barnes. He is our new Director of Student Conduct and Community Standards. He is the person who is going to be overseeing all of our student handbook, all of our campus policies, and then working through issues when students are accused of violating one of our policies outside of the classroom or outside of academics. So he'll handle a lot of the non-academic misconduct and working with residence hall staff also when there's violations of policy in the residence halls. He also will be working very closely in student issues related to Title IX, so any sexual misconduct, harassment, any protected class complaints, and adjudicating those after they've been investigated. One of the areas that he has a lot of strength in is doing conflict mediation and informal resolution and talking circles and those kinds of things. So developing those programs and kind of beefing up that side of the house in terms of resources that my office can provide is really exciting for us. I'm really glad he's here.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fair to say with his position and yours, you're dealing a lot with student rights and responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing all students really need to know, that in virtually every single situation, and I can't think of a situation that they wouldn't have, but they do have a certain amount of rights. whether it is a non-academic issue that you would be in charge of, or even under academics, whether it is a grievance against a faculty member or they are accused of some type of academic misconduct.
Or a great appeal.
Or a great appeal. So, I mean, would you agree with me when I would say that it is extraordinarily important for students to actually look at and read the student handbook?
Absolutely. That document will not only provide a lot of what our policies are, it does outline, particularly when you've been accused of something, what rights and responsibilities you have. It does also, though, really highlight the responsibilities that students have in terms of knowing policies, in terms of knowing things like where you can park, in terms of knowing resources, and being able to then take that information and being responsible for that information and using it to your best ability. So yes, the student handbook is a great place to start. It's published up on the web. It's an open public document that anyone can see. Parents can see it, community members can see it, students can see it. And it's definitely a good place to start looking for information, whether it be what does the registrar's office do, or what does the library have to offer, what does the student rec center have to offer. There's information in that document about all of those services, but then also outlines our student code of conduct. What happens when students are accused of violating any of our policies, whether they're academic, non-academic, sexual misconduct in nature, Title IX in nature. All of that is outlined in the student handbook. There's also our grievance policies are outlined in the student handbook. So if a student has a complaint against a faculty member or a staff member, a department, any of those kinds of things, there's a referral source in there, as well as then procedures on how to utilize that complaint process. Mm-hmm. Really what it boils down to is students knowing what their rights are and then having the responsibility themselves to use those, but realizing that college is not just somewhere where you can go and do what you want to do. We still have to maintain some community standards, and that student handbook is a great place to start.
Thank you. So what I want to talk about is a little bit, all of us have been undergraduate students at some time in our lives. For me, a little bit longer ago than for both of you. But what was the biggest challenge or the thing that possibly hurt you the most your freshman year?
I guess I'll go first on that one because I was visualizing my Western Civ textbook and how scared I was of all the reading that I had to do. I have dyslexia, and I had adjusted well to the demands of high school, and I had that all figured out. And I remember when I started college, I thought the reading was going to do me in. And I talk about my intimidation with Western Civ. History ended up being my major, so that was actually a course I was predisposed to really be very interested in. For me, getting over that hurdle of intimidation involved being able to listen to some older students. I was very fortunate that my roommate freshman year was actually a junior who worked at the Writing Center. And so she was able to give me some good guidelines and tips on time management and how to do things more effectively so that I didn't feel completely undone by the increase in workload. I will say here that we do have a great cohort of peer mentors that work in student success, so they will be attached to sections of UNIV. But even if you're not in UNIV, let's say you're a sophomore and for some reason this workload hit you harder this year, or you're in the general engineering class, you can come on by to the second floor of Jernigan Library and ask to speak to one of our peer mentors who can help guide you through issues such as how to manage your time, how to handle a heavier workload than maybe you've been accustomed to in the past. Essentially, if the first couple of weeks of college doesn't intimidate you a bit and you don't feel worried about the workload, then we at A&M Kingsville are not doing our job. So the intimidation is normal. The trick is finding the helpers who are going to help get you through that intimidation factor.
For me, the biggest struggle that I had was finding balance. Balancing between the workload that I knew that I had to do. Time management played a lot into that, but also then balancing out spending too much time with my friends, and really striking that I've got to do homework, but my friends want to hang out. The time management was definitely an issue for me there, but I think it was even a little broader than that, of just really feeling like I could balance all of the areas of my life, not just in time, but just in the energy that I was giving to them. Some of that for me as a freshman looked like skipping class, and gosh, I paid for it. I didn't do as well in some of my classes, and particularly the ones that I skipped, because I wasn't going and hearing information presented, even though I could read it and I could learn it from a textbook. We didn't have PowerPoints back then, but getting notes from friends, it still wasn't the same as hearing it explained in person. So thinking that I could learn everything from the textbook was part of that for me. So finding that balance of not only how I do everything, but what energy I was putting into doing those kinds of things. I needed to put more energy into my academic career rather than spending all of my time at the rec center or hanging out with my friends or that kind of a thing. The other thing I think that I really struggled with a lot, I had an ill parent at home, and I struggled with some issues of homesickness. And I think that actually hit me particularly more my sophomore year in college rather than my freshman year in college. But because I had an ill parent at home, I had to go home the first weekend of my college experience, and I felt like I missed out. So I had some of that fear of missing out that we hear about now. I did miss out on some of those kinds of things. And that was a pretty integral time of when my friends and when my floor mates in the residence hall that I lived in really started kind of developing their friendships and their patterns and what were weekends going to look like. And I went home the first weekend. So I would certainly encourage students to spend some time here on the weekends to really ingrain themselves in the college experience and not miss out on that by going home too early. There's other ways that you can maintain some of that balance with your family as well. So it just really kind of finding that good balance for me between home life and my friends and my academics was really a struggle for me. I figured it out finally. Part of that was finding my place on campus and finding the ways that I needed to be engaged in a student organization and find my group of friends. And finding people who were serious about school drove me to be more serious about school. It's all about who I surrounded myself with and being able to rely on them. Luckily, my roommate from my freshman year in college was really smart and spent a heck of a lot of time studying. And I felt like a slacker when I was in my room and not studying. And she was. Finding that right group of people to be around and what your support system looks like. What they do is what will ultimately, I think, help drive you to do what they do. If they're playing video games all the time, you're going to play video games all the time. If they're studying all the time, you're probably going to study a bit more. So it was kind of that balance of headspace for me was my biggest struggle.
For me, the biggest challenge I had was overcoming my own personality in many ways. They're laughing because they know me. Yes. If you take my class, you'll come to know me. But at 18, as a freshman in college, I was an extraordinarily immature 18-year-old and an immature decision maker. I mean, one of the first immature decisions that I made was to accept a basketball scholarship. I did play a couple of semesters until my knees decided I no longer was going to play. But at the farthest school away from my parents that wanted me to play ball, because I grew up in a very, very strict household overall. And so that first year, maybe the third semester, well, also, maybe especially the third semester, I really systematically checked off every box that my parents told me I was not supposed to do. Which,
freedom.
Yeah, I had freedom for the first time, and I overdosed on it.
Right.
The other thing, and it goes hand in hand with that, was time management skills. Now, I should have had every advantage coming into the undergraduate experience. A and B student, never really had to study in high school. That hurt me because I never learned how to study.
Right.
And, high SATs, all of these predictors that are supposed to say this one person is supposed to be a good college student. We don't have to worry about him. Well, buckle up, as the name of the show is. So I was the king of wasting time. My time should have been pretty regimented. Classes, basketball practice, studying, other things, after all that's done. Yeah, I went to basketball practice. Class was a whole other thing. And then if I wasn't in basketball, it was other things. In our version of the Memorial Student Union building where there's ping pong tables and pool tables and other, shooting pool for hours with my friends.
Majoring in game room is what I call it. Yep.
Majoring in game room, majoring in, now this is in the mid-1980s, so...
Man, you're old.
Yes, I am. And proud of it. I've earned every single gray hair that I have. But the drinking age was 18 then.
Yep.
So there were things available to me that aren't necessarily, at least legally, available to our incoming students. Yep. So partying was a big part of my life. Now, I never want to put down Greek life, but besides basketball, I joined a fraternity. I was trying to have the whole college experience, but I was having the whole college experience without the classroom.
Right.
And so once I hurt my knees, and one of the things is I did not know of a lot of our campus resources, especially when it came to mental health issues and who to go to and who to trust. So basically what happened was what probably was severe depression manifesting itself in alcohol and drug abuse. A lot of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And by the time the end of my third semester, I was already on academic probation, but I had a 0.0 at the end of my third semester and a cumulative 1.2. And they said, Mike, your presence on this campus is no longer needed, nor desired.
Right.
And I flunked out of my first school. Now, poor me, not really. Look where I am now. I'm teaching at a university with a PhD. But it's that balance of time management that is the hardest. It is easy to just waste time just sitting around talking with your friends, getting lost in a conversation, and next thing you know it, an hour or more has gone by. But what I learned, and give you a lesson, because, how to mess up your life, I wrote the book on that. The sequel was much better, How to Fix It. So after laying out for a couple of years, going back much more seriously, what I discovered that worked for me, and might not work for every single student out there, because we have students in much different circumstances that I had, was treat college like a job.
Right.
So the prototypical hours for a job, it's a 40-hour work week. The prototypical load is 15 hours, which means you are in class 15 hours a week. So 40 minus 15 is 25. Study 25 hours. So what I did, I tucked my tail between my legs, moved back home, and said, can I live at home while I try to finish up my degree? My father very nicely said, yes. He said, but you're not going to work. This is the only thing you're going to do. And I'll give you enough for gas money, but you're going to have to learn how to live poor. So, or live modestly. Being broke is one thing. Being poor is a whole different gig, and I don't want to mix those two up. But I went to class between 8 and 5. Everything I did between 8 and 5 was academically related. 40 hours a week. Hour for a lunch hour, 15, 20-minute break in the morning, cup of coffee, soda, whatever, 15, 20-minute break in the afternoon. By the time 5 o'clock rolls around, I put in my full day. I'm done. I had time to do whatever I wanted, including meet and marry the woman that I met there that has become my wife of 30 years. Always got to plug the boss. She's management on labor. That's why I really wish I lived in a union state, but that's a whole other issue for another time.
We can get the counseling center in to talk about relationship issues.
Definitely. And the weekends, they were my own. And like a job, every once in a while, midterms, that week that every single paper or lab manual or lab report seems due, finals, you got to put in a little overtime. After I went back, and this is the nice ending to this story, I never was below a 3.5 average and made the president's list twice. So, we do have a lot of students on campus that are forced to have to work any place from a part-time job to an absolutely full-time job in order to help themselves, pay for school, or help their families. But the thing is, and what I would hope that they would take from this is, or think about, short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. Mm-hmm. So short-term sacrifice, you might not have as much time to date if you're working and going to school or do other things. But what's the long-term goal for our students overall is graduation and then turning, hopefully, that degree into a much better job than they would normally get without a college education.
And I was kind of the opposite of that thinking, where having a part-time job when I was a junior and senior actually forced me to manage my time better. And I did better when I was managing my time better. My grades got better the more involved I got, not to the point of being over-involved, but becoming a resident assistant and finding a passion for helping students and getting into some of those upper-level classes really helped me better focus my time and my efforts and helped me find some of that balance a little bit better than what I saw when I was a freshman and sophomore. So what you're saying, though, about treating this like a job is exactly what I tell parents when they're looking at their students' schedule of getting out of the mindset of being in high school, where many of our high school students come to college, like you talked about, not knowing how to study because you didn't have to study in high school. You never brought homework home in high school. My son very rarely had homework in high school with the classes that he was taking, and it was an eye-opening experience to understand that you can't do that in 15 hours a week sitting in college classes when you're used to spending those almost 35 or 40 hours a week in high school classes where time was built in to do that work. It's a shift in mindset, but part of that shift in mindset also can include lots of other things you haven't done. It's a matter of finding what works for you and what works to help you better manage your time and what feeds some of your passions and feeds some of your soul, rather than it just being all work or all play. You have to find some of that balance.
And I was not as organized with my time as Dr. Houf. I also did work after my freshman year, a work-study position on campus, and that helped to structure my time. Mm-hmm. But I knew if I did not maintain a good GPA, my parents weren't going to help me with college, and I was fortunate to have their help in getting through college. I do understand that. I loved being at college. I was not homesick for 1 minute, which maybe that says bad things about me. But at any rate, my whole approach to college was, what do I have to do to stay here? And so instead of overindulging in the fun, I made sure that I was doing what I needed to do to get to stay at college. And for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my degree as a freshman. I didn't know what I was really going to end up majoring in. I was not the most focused college student, but I knew I loved college. I knew I loved where I was going to college. And I knew I loved, for me, not living at home. And so that was my primary motivating factor, sorry, Mom, if you're listening, was what do I got to do to stay here? And for me, that helped me to organize my time well enough to keep pushing through.
So, I mean, after this, what I would hope that our students would realize is there's not one college experience.
Right.
Everybody's experience is different. Everybody's experience is valid.
Yes.
But for those of us who get into trouble, and many of our students do, one of the hardest things for me at that time, and I know for a lot of our students, is asking for help.
Yes. Yes.
And it's the difference of one of my favorite things to talk about with students is what is pride versus dumb pride. So pride, to me, is, okay, nobody expects much of Mike as a student because he flunked out of his first thing, is going in and making the dean's list and taking that attitude and sticking it someplace on them and showing how good I actually really am. Dumb pride is, okay, I'm doing poorly in calculus or algebra or history or whatever. I don't want to ask the question. I don't want to ask for help because I don't want to look dumb in front of other people or dumb in front of this intimidating, and yes, we can be very intimidating, this intimidating professor.
Right.
And that is, at least for me, was a big problem because I don't want to ask questions. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to look dumb. Well, guess what? I didn't ask questions. I would avoid my professors. I had no clue what was going on in class. I failed, to the surprise of no one who was paying attention to what was going on. So how would you recommend going to ask for help, or whom would you recommend students go and ask for help?
So what I would say is make it a habit from the very first or second week of classes to ask for help. Ask for help every week from someone. And so you can start easy with your peer mentor because they're just about your age, and you can ask them how to ask for help. You can ask them, how do I email a professor to say I want to stop by office hours? You don't actually even have to email your professor to stop by office hours, by the way. You can just stop by, or to make an appointment outside of office hours. So the peer mentors can help talk you through how to go to a professor's office hours or how to write that email. Remind yourself, too, that if you have a question for your faculty member or for a peer mentor or for somebody in student activities, then probably at least 50 other students have that same question, and they will be glad you asked it if you asked it in class or if you asked it privately with the faculty member, but then he addresses it. He won't say, hey, Kirsten asked me this question the other day. He'll just say, a student asked me a question. I thought some others of you might be confused. Mm-hmm. Here's the answer to that. So usually if you ask for help, other people are going to be thankful too. And asking for help is a habit of success that you just need to engage in on a regular basis. Please come to the tutoring center. We invest good money in paying those very well-trained tutors to help you. Our whole purpose for existing in student success is simply to help you guys. And so in order to do that, we need you all to come on in. So we like nothing better than to see busy offices, busy peer mentors, busy academic advisors, busy tutors, because then we know that students are doing what they need to do in reaching out for the help that they need.
I think one of the other things that I remind students and remind parents about quite a bit as well is realizing that faculty and our support staff that we have on campus are humans. We put our pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. I know of very few people who can jump into pants without doing it one leg at a time.
Not without injuring themselves.
Correct, especially if you have bad knees. So while faculty or staff or coming to the Dean of Students office or stopping in to ask a question at financial aid or any number of places that you can go to ask for help, we're all here because we want to be here. We're here because we want students to succeed. And part of it, I think, is getting over your own mental block of, I have to do this on my own. I like the idea of asking for help, even if it's a small thing of somebody at least once a week. But really remembering that there's not a whole heck of a lot that students can share with us or can say to us that are going to shock us anymore because of how long we have worked in higher education and how long we've worked with students. We've just when I think I've seen it all, something new will pop up, but it's usually just a new scenario.
It's a surprise, not a shock.
It's a new scenario of an old standing problem that we likely have the ability to help resolve. It's just the new twist on it. There's all sorts of help that's available. And as Dr. Baker said, we love nothing more than to see people busy. I love nothing more than sitting and talking with students and seeing the light bulbs go off when they finally get something that maybe they've been struggling with, or they come back and say, I took your advice and I did X, Y, and Z and it worked. We tell you those things because we know that they can work. One of the other philosophies that I work from, and I know that a lot of other people work from, is that we don't want to solve your problems for you. We want to equip you with the tools to solve the problems, but we'll be there to support you and guide you and encourage you. We'll go to meetings with you if need be. We'll help you craft the email to the professor if need be. But what we want to do as you're struggling is give you the tools that when you struggle again in the future, you have the ability to solve that on your own. Those are ways that you can then be more successful in college because you've started building your toolbox, but even more importantly, then you know how to do those things when you get out of the college environment and into your first jobs.
You beat me to saying that.
Of being able to solve problems and think critically and to be able to approach a situation and think, gosh, something like this similar happened when I was in college. Maybe I should approach it X, Y, and Z.
Because you can recover more easily in college. So you're having a problem in a class, you fail the class, you can take it again.
Right.
If you don't do what you're supposed to do in your profession, in your job, you get fired.
Right. Right. So I think it's important to allow yourself to make some mistakes also while you're going through the college experience, but it's okay to ask for help. We're here. We want to help you. We don't want to solve it for you. We want to help you solve your problems. We have so many resources that are available on this campus. It's mind-blowing when those resources go unused because there's so much help available. We just need people to identify that they need help, and we will point you towards absolutely everything that we can. We want you to be successful. We want to see students graduate. We want to see them walk across the stage. And there's, I think, no better feeling for any of us who sit and watch graduation and think, that person struggled and they made it. Good for them. We're still cheering you as you walk across the stage.
I've got my Kleenex ready for Friday.
That's right. Commencement is Friday, coming up. This is going to be aired after this, but putting in context, it's one of, at least as a faculty member, the 3 favorite times of the year, the 3 commencements that we do have, is seeing those students who have persevered, who have succeeded.
I also wanted to point out a couple of resources that I think both Kirsten and I forgot earlier. So we've been talking a lot about academic resources and help if you're having trouble, a grievance with a faculty member, but we also have emergency grant aid that you can apply for through the Student Affairs website, which is, I think, up to $250
$250 a year.
So if you had an unexpected car repair or something of that nature, we're able to offer help. And then in the Center for Student Success, we have support through advocacy and resources where we have 2 social work students who will help to match you to potential resources in the community. So if you are a single parent and you need help with childcare, or you need some transportation assistance or rental assistance if you're living off campus, they can help see what you're eligible for and match you with area resources. So when we say we have help for almost anything you can imagine, we really do mean it. And if we don't have that help, we're going to help try to find where you can get that assistance.
Right. Yeah. And one of the other areas that I don't think that we've talked about enough yet either is our Student Counseling Center. We have got a phenomenal group of students working through our student counseling, or professionals working through our Student Counseling Center to help students who are struggling with mental health issues, who are medication dependent, and doing the monitoring that needs to happen for their connecting up with psychiatrists if we need to, all the way, to really severe kinds of things, all the way to the other side of the spectrum of I have some social anxiety, or I have test anxiety, or I'm dealing with issues of homesickness. So it doesn't necessarily have to be diagnosed mental health kinds of things. It could just be a stressful situation. I just need to sit and talk with someone. I've just broken up with a significant other, and I just want to process through what's happened. Our counseling center can work through all sorts of different resources or different situations, and then connect students to resources if it's beyond what we have to offer here on campus. Even connecting students sometimes with hospitalization if need be, and then working through all of those issues that come with missing classes and notices of absences. Our Student Counseling Center is absolutely wonderful in terms of supporting our students and doing what we can to help our students stay here who may be struggling with things that may have prevented people our age in the past from being successful in college. Those days are gone. The stigma around mental health right now is absolutely something that if I could challenge students who struggle with mental health or struggle with undiagnosed depression or struggle with issues, is to just take that step to break out of your own mind and your own headspace sometimes to ask for the help, to connect with the resources that can help them. It can really make or break somebody's college experience to just have that person that can be the safe person to talk to.
Absolutely.
And support and encourage and potentially help get connected up to the people who can diagnose and get you on the right medications.
That's one thing that I would recommend every student to do. Find two people.
Yep.
One person your age, a classmate, and one person, faculty, staff, administration, that you can trust, that you can go to, who will listen. And I have a good amount of students that come and talk to me, and my office I try to make it a safe zone. Whatever you say in my office doesn't go outside of the office unless it's a subject that I'm required as an agent of the university to report.
Right.
But everybody needs somebody that will just listen to them. Now, all of the resources that we've talked about so far, whether it is over at Life Services and Wellness or the PAC Center, is it still called the PAC Center? The PAC Center. None of these are direct charges to students. They're not paying for it at that time. Now, at the same time, though, except for where we have some grant money paying for it, all of this has been paid for by the students and their parents in financial aid through tuition and fees.
Correct.
So you are not getting something for free. You are getting something you have already paid for.
Exactly.
And it's not like you're going to get a refund on it. I mean, we're going to keep your money as an institution, but you might as well take advantage of something you've already paid for. This is yours.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about professors. People like me, people like Dr. Baker used to be, and for full disclosure, Dr. Baker and I both taught and I do teach in the Department of History, Political Science, and Philosophy, and we can throw criminal justice in there too. I wouldn't want Dr. Kim or Dr. Plank to get annoyed at me for not mentioning them. Dr. Baker, you mentioned office hours earlier, and I don't know if every student understands. On every syllabi that you get this coming semester and every subsequent semester after this, there will be times that your professor lists for office hours. Now, every professor on this campus is required as part of our job to keep 5 hours of office hours each week. So that's 5 hours that are devoted to our current, former, future students or whomever walks into our office. And it's devoted to students for you to come ask us help, whether it's mentoring, you're thinking about graduate school or need letters of recommendation for jobs, or if you're in, say, my class and you don't understand what we're trying to get across or accomplish, you're lost, you're coming to me for help. Now, one of the services that we have through Dr. Baker's side of the university are SI, and I think it's now known as Peer-Assisted Learning, PALS.
Right.
It used to be known as supplemental instruction. But I have a student, I want to call him doctor, he's headed to graduate school, but Matthew Alvarez, and he's there to tutor and help students, and he keeps hours. But as good as Matthew has proved to be, why not come in and get tutoring from the person teaching your class? I love it when students come in, because what that shows somebody like me is you are invested in your education. You're invested in your learning experience. And your professors, especially me in this case, will be mirrors to your investment, to your effort. I will put in as much or more into my students that they're willing to put in themselves. If I never hear from them, if they don't come to class, I'm going to fill out the starfish reports and say they're not coming to class. But at the same time, I have these other students who both need and want my attention and my help. So go to your professor's office hours. And honestly, and I don't think I am going to be betraying other faculty with saying this, especially if you have a component in your class of attendance and class participation. It's not brown-nosing. It's not kissing up to the professor to go, but it will give you the benefit of the doubt in other cases. So if you come to my office hours and you need extra help, you ask for extra help, when it comes at the end of the grading, I'm going to look at this student who has really knocked themselves out, who's put in maximum or near maximum effort, and they're just a little bit away from a certain grade. Well, I'm going to look at that and say, yeah, that kid is given the effort. Kid, I'm sorry, you're all adults, but at my age, anybody under 30 is a kid. Either way, and young enough to be my child, which really annoys me saying that out loud. But to the student who I can't tell who they are, because they haven't come to class, they haven't turned into assignments. If there's a break to give them, why should I give that to them?
This sounds like a conversation I had with my kid just a couple of days ago. Geez.
It's a conversation I've had with both of my kids. One is a rising senior at A&M Kingsville. The other one is an incoming freshman at A&M Kingsville. I'm not going to give you their names because they're going to wish to remain anonymous and just not be embarrassed by dad, like us parents can do quite easily, and in some cases enjoy it a great deal.
No, I will say too, instead of thinking of it as office hours, think of it as student hours. I think sometimes
a better term.
Faculty office hours, students think, oh, that's when he's in his office doing work. But no, those are times that we have designated to be with you. And really, it makes a faculty member's day if a student comes to office hours. Also,
office hours are rather boring from what I understand when students don't show up.
You can't really get engaged in your research because a student might stop by. So really, we're just in there waiting for you to stop by.
And never trust a closed door. Knock.
Yeah, you can knock on the door, and then I understand that you all haven't had as much practice interacting with teachers in face-to-face situations because of COVID. But keep in mind, most professors are a little socially awkward too. We spent lots of time alone writing our dissertations or in a lab. We're not the most socially adept people in the world. And so you don't have to worry about how socially adept you are when you knock on that faculty member's door. You just have to remember your name and why you showed up. And it could just be, hi, Dr. Huff, I'm Shannon. I'm in your history class, and I just thought I'd stop by to get to know you a little bit better. It could be as simple as that, a 5-minute conversation to get to know him, so that after I fail his midterm, which I would never do, I then
Don't kid yourself. No,
all
I'm
right,
kidding.
You
went to
might
his
not, I
office
would.
hour, and I already talked to him once. It's not so scary now to go in that I've got a problem. Hey, Dr. Huff, remember me from earlier in the semester? I'm so embarrassed that I got a 40 on your test. Can you tell me how I could do better the next time? It's not as scary as it feels, and practice will make it better.
You've broken the ice by stopping and introducing yourself beforehand.
And our professors here love undergraduates.
And when I was an undergrad, I actually learned more during office hours of my professors who would become my mentors than I actually did in class, because we would start on a topic, and I do this with students. So if, you come into my office and you start asking me questions, guess what? I'm going to answer them, and I'm probably going to give you more information than you probably anticipated or maybe even wanted. But it was a blast. And it's really those conversations in office hours with professors that turned around my student experience once I understood what was going on, how to go ask them for help, how to talk to them. That, then I learned to love college.
One of the other things that I would encourage students to do, especially students that have a diagnosed disability, is to get to know their faculty members as well.
Yes.
Just as an example, I was reading one of my textbooks or an article for the class that I'm taking right now in educational leadership. One of the examples that they gave in that book was a student having severe test anxiety and just not being able to perform on tests, but went in and talked during office hours and got into a discussion that was able to show the professor the grasp that person had on the material, and said, gosh, I've just asked you every question that's going to be on the final, so why don't you just go ahead and come in and take the final? It's another way of being able to show your mastery of the information, particularly for people who may struggle with some of those mastery illustrations that we have through taking tests or writing papers or those kinds of things. But I think particularly for our disability students, you don't have to divulge what disability you have, but making those connections can make some of that learning easier. Or when there are issues, you have those opportunities to bridge that gap, or you have the opportunity to then have the confidential conversation with the faculty about what it is that you have been given by our Disability Resource Center in terms of accommodations and what that's going to look like for you, so that you don't have to do that in front of a broader group of people. Office hours can be used for that, but it's building those relationships with faculty who really are the ones, again, evaluating for not only grades, but then as you mentioned during office hours of asking for those letters of recommendation. You're going to be able to, as a faculty member, write a letter of recommendation for students that you know, rather than somebody who took a class and was a nameless face sitting in a classroom full of 30 or 50 people that you only saw when there was an exam because they skipped the rest of the classes. You can't write an effective recommendation letter for that. And as you start getting into issues of applying for grad school and needing recommendations or applying for jobs, you have to have made those relationships with people so that they can help you be more effective in that way as well. So.
Yeah. And I know we keep backtracking to things, but I do want to emphasize something else. For those who, and I hate the term learning disabilities, it's learning different, who had 504 plans in high school, go to Life Services and Wellness and register, because there are accommodations. So for someone like Dr. Baker, who's dyslexic, it doesn't mean that she's learning disabled. It means that her brain processes things differently than the majority, or at least what we consider the mainstream of society.
Neurotypical.
Neurotypical. That's And he'd probably kill me, but I'm not going to mention his name. I mean, one of my sons is seriously dyslexic, and he will be coming in with certain accommodations because we made sure that he registered with Life Services and Wellness. But that didn't stop him from, in high school, being a member of National Honor Society, of getting almost all A's and occasional B's. It just takes him, because he's not necessarily neurotypical, longer to do some tasks than others. Right. And, he's quite intimidated by the reading load and the workload coming in. And, it would be actually unhealthy if he wasn't.
Right. And our Disability Resource Center does have readers that are available, so you can scan and have your textbook read to you if your way of processing information makes it difficult to read. If you have severe test anxiety and you need to be taking an exam in a quiet location away from everyone else and you need some extra time on that, those are some of those accommodations that being registered through the Disability Resource Center can provide you with those mechanisms to be successful. We don't expect that everyone is going to be able to sit and take a test all at the same time and in the same way, and we know that everyone is different, and for those students who need some of that extra attention in those areas, we want to give it to them. It's one of their rights as a student, coming back to student rights and responsibilities. It's a right that you have as a student to be able to be given those accommodations for disabilities that you may have, that you qualify for those. So,
and no professor is going to think less of you for it.
Nor can a professor punish someone for having a disability accommodation. So,
or deny them.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right. And there are processes in place then as well for students who believe that they're not being given the accommodations that they need to have. Again, there's those resources available, but we need students to tell us when things like that aren't running correctly, so
and
that we can get those
it's not always
those
because faculty want to discriminate.
Right.
Sometimes, especially when you have new faculty coming in, they might not necessarily, they're just out of graduate school themselves, and this might be their first time really teaching. They might not understand the laws. They might not understand all the policies, because usually a faculty member, our brand new hires this fall might have moved here already, might be in process of moving as classes start, and they're just getting into the classes. So remember, allow your faculty members, allow us to be human too. Right. What we want to do is solve an issue like that at the lowest level. So talk to the faculty member. If you do not feel comfortable with that quite yet, talk to Life Services and Wellness. Since you've registered them, they'll send an email to the faculty member, probably to the faculty member's chair, and I almost guarantee you the faculty member's reaction is going to be, "Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry about that. Let's set this up."
Right.
And keep in mind, too, accommodations are available for physical disabilities as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, if you had a 504 plan for learning differences or a physical disability as a high school student, then check in with Student Health and Wellness to see what accommodations would be available to you as a college student. It's really not giving anybody anything extra. It's achieving equity for students.
And just for clarity, Life Services and Wellness and Student Health and Wellness are terms that we use on campus interchangeably. The official name is Student Health and Wellness, but for those who have been around for a while, Life Services and Wellness is Student Health and Wellness. So
my fault. Force a habit from long service.
Absolutely, but there are others who will refer to other things, and this is a good way to ask for help. You may hear a term used and you just don't understand or recognize what that term is. It could be that we're using terms that we've used for a long time, and there are new terms that are available, or vice versa. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. I like that you've already, Dr. Houf, talked about those the times where you struggle by not asking for help or not asking the questions are really, I guess the phrase that comes to mind is that the dumbest question that's out there is the one that's not asked.
Exactly.
Ask those questions, get that clarification.
Well, we're about to run out of time, but a couple more things before we close, I just want to emphasize here. Number one, go to class.
Yes.
Yes.
Go to class. 2, take your exams, take your quizzes, turn in your papers. Zeros kill. And as
Yes.
your professor, I can do nothing with a 0. It's just a 0.
And going back to the going to class, one of the things that I see in the Dean of Students office all the time, right before finals start, and I tell this to parents at Hoggy Days as well, I get frustrated when students come into my office the day before finals begin and say, I have been struggling in this class, or I haven't been to class all semester. What can you do to help me pass? At that point, what my reaction is and what a faculty's member reaction is probably going to be is, let's get you in contact with your advisor so that we can have you register for the class again, because there's nothing we can do. Right. Go to class, ask for that help early. But
Problems are easier to fix
class,
sooner
yes.
rather than later.
But going to class can be so much more of that battle of even if you skip class for a week because you've been out with COVID or a family emergency, it may seem intimidating to go back to class. Go back to class even if you've had a lapse in attendance. Going to class is huge.
And if you're scared to turn in the assignment because you feel like you look like an idiot because you feel like you didn't do well, and we've all been there.
Turn it in
It's still
anyway.
better to turn it in, and then it'll be less scary the next time.
Because you're definitely not going to look all that bright for not turning it in.
Right.
And it will not be the worst assignment your professor has ever seen. It just won't.
No. Okay, so I want to thank Associate Vice President for Student Success, Dr. Shannon Baker, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, Kirsten Compary, and thank all of you for listening. This has been Dr. Michael Houf, and this has been Buckle Up. See you next time, or talk to you next time.